We're always quick to criticise our politicians, particularly on the issue of identity politics and the madness of identity politics. It always irked me enormously, and we've talked about this, that the most senior civil servant, public servant in Canberra, Martin Parkinson, was convinced that he had some kind of unconscious bias and couldn't actually sit in front of a white person and a non-white person and not give the white person the job. Complete lunatic. Fortunately, he's gone. But has the identity politics that he brought in to the public service, has it gone? Well, great news. Last week, there was a bit of insanity left over. PM&C put up signs, I don't know if we've got a photo of them here, signs of outside the toilets, where they were saying that the public service... Tell us, Rita.
Well, essentially, we respect diversity. This is on a bathroom, mind you, and please just use the bathroom that best suits your chosen gender.
So best fits your gender identity.
That's it. There were signs... way too much detail on a bathroom, just a picture of a woman or a man, that's all you need. But no, this had a couple of paths of explanation. And I applaud Scott Morrison for pushing back and saying, nah, take it down, enough.
So Scott Morrison came out and said, this is insanity, this is madness. So finally, a Liberal Prime Minister...
It's a little thing.
It's a little thing.
Taking a step against identity politics. We need a lot more of it.
I thought, though, there was a much more interesting thing that also happened about the reaction to the story. If you looked on Twitter and you looked in the lefty progressive media, the person who first called this out was Chris Uhlmann, who's basically the only sound person at Channel 9, but he's very smart, and he put this up on Twitter. Now, this went nuts, and everybody started piling into Chris for this, and it was interesting to me because also Chris has been talking very much about Chinese infiltration, but none of the same people worry about that. So it tells me that there's a lot of people out there who are far more concerned about, these sort of identity politics rights about where you go to the toilet than they are about the potential infiltration of Australia by a foreign hostile power.
Even Anthony Albanese, though, had a go at Scott Morrison for daring to talk back against this, and I just find that astonishing for a man whose party is so obsessed with identity politics that he thinks it's wrong for the Prime Minister to enter that arena and have a say as well.
Well, I think it's... because they're scared. Labor are scared. Yeah. Because if Scott Morrison knows what's the right thing to do, the sensible thing to do, he will start attacking this stuff wherever it pops up, because it pops up like weeds in the public service. You've got to start slashing it down.
Australians do have
it's such an insult to the taxpayer that money has been spent to stick up a sign on some bathroom in some overblown palace
complex,
saying, and this stuff has to be fought, it has to be weeded out, and good on Scott Morrison. Let's see a lot more of it, please. Now, speaking of transgender madness and funding cuts, you've got a story for us, Rita.
Well, this is quite a disturbing one. This is the oldest rape crisis centre in Canada. And it has funding, some fund from the city has been cancelled because they want to keep that a female-only space. So if you are presenting as a woman, if you identify as a woman but you're biologically male, they don't want you to be in that safe space that they've created for rape victims.
Well, blame them?
Not only have had their funding cut, but they have just had this campaign of terror against them, a dead rat nailed to their door, all these horrific signs plastered everywhere, all these abuse they're copying. These are people helping rape victims.
So this is people helping rape victims who don't want men who pretend they're women or want to think they're women or whatever it might be, coming into their space, quite rightly, and yet they're being terrorised.
But they are, and they've had their funding
This is why it's so important for the Liberals to attack this garbage, because the moment it starts at a small level, it blossoms out like this. Well, speaking of which, we're talking about women being done out of the ring girls yesterday at the fight with Jeff Horn.
Yes.
Tell us about this, James.
So there was going to be a boxing match in Bendigo, Victoria, and they were going to have, the usual thing with the ring girls who would come around and, have the big signs with what round it was. Anyway, so there was agitation from feminists, the usual suspects, who said, well, you can't do this because, of course...
And a counsellor,
and a counsellor, a local counsellor, and they all threatened to shut down the fight and basically said, hey, women, you can be whatever you want to be so long as it's not a grid girl. And then the organizers of the fight had to get rid of the grid girls, get guys instead to do it, and I think they called them something like progress officials or something ridiculous like that, which just shows how Orwellian the language is. They've actually just done some girls out of a job doing a fun thing.
Well, and I think that's the organisers having a bit of fun with the women's groups and the local councillor, because these 3 women have been done out of job, you're right, and they've said, OK, we're just going to hire 3 blokes, give them a silly name, and you're basically, through your advocacy for women, you are seeing women replaced in the workforce with men. That is what the end result is.
We saw this last year with, I think it was the grid girls at the
F1.
Formula One. And they weren't allowed to be there. So these are girls who have a great job, great life, thrilled with the opportunities they get.
Because if you're, say, a Madonna or a Miley Cyrus, and you can be completely naked, and it's empowering, and you are embracing your body and your female power. But if you're a grid girl, then you're being objectified, and so it's good for the rich women, but not for the ones who are trying to get a job.
It's that elitist, left-wing elitist thing that runs through everything, and they sneer at the working class girls who do these jobs, and while they ponce around as pop stars banging on about climate change or whatever.